Good morning. West Coast people, good morning. Good afternoon, East Coast people. I'm really excited that Zillow gets to host this conversation. Welcome to today's Fairy God Boss live webinar hosted by Zillow Careers. We're going to give you all a few seconds to connect, and then we're going to jump in. While we're waiting, I'll do some announcements. I know that on the right side of your screen, you should be able to see a chat box, so please feel comfortable putting questions in the chat box and asking us questions throughout or letting us know what resonates with you. We want to make sure we know where everybody's joining from and what's top of mind for you. So if you don't mind just getting in that chat now, you can start doing that while we're waiting to start. And I'll give another few quick announcements. The session will be recorded and it will be shared afterwards with anyone who registered. So if you know people who want to hear it and they can't attend, make sure they register so they can see it later. And during the discussion, I just already talked about the stage chat, but we definitely want to hear from you as well. So our goal is for this to be a conversation, not necessarily a super typical ask a question, get an answer. So we're just going to talk. We do all know each other, and we would love to hear what you think about the conversation and what we're saying. So for anybody who doesn't know, Fairy God Boss is the largest online career community for women. Millions of women visit Fairy God Boss for career connections, jobs, community advice, virtual events like this, and hard to find intel about companies and how they treat women. So now I'm excited to introduce our talk, which is called Thriving on Your Terms, How to Take Charge of Your Development, a conversation hosted by Zillow Careers. I will introduce myself. I'll start by saying I am the senior manager for our talent brand team at Zillow Group. Talent brand is the team that handles like employer brand, telling people why they should come work at Zillow. We do our career site, we do social media campaigns, we throw lots of events, we do a lot. And so that is our motto, my team's motto. We're always doing the most. And so I've been at Zillow since October 2023. And I had a chance in October of 2024 to go on an amazing trip. I went on a safari extravaganza for a very special woman's 30th birthday. And then I met all of these women on this trip. So shout out to Abita Amolgan if she is tuned in. But we all met on this trip. And I had a chance to overhear on our 5-hour drive out to the Masai Mara a really awesome conversation about how to develop yourself, even if you may have a manager who isn't quite capable of filling in those gaps or giving you what you need. And so I was like, we need to make this a podcast. We need to make this a thing. And all of these women were graceful enough to like say yes. And so my team put this together. So I'm really excited for all of you to hear this conversation. Let me also introduce our speakers. They're going to introduce themselves, but I'm going to give you a high level. We have Chantal, who is a senior software engineer. We have Hailey Shavers. I didn't say Chantal's last name, Lewis. Hailey Shavers, who's a web presence engineer. And then Whitney Griffith, who is an acquisition entrepreneur. So I am going to have them introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump in. But I'm super excited, so I can't wait. So Chantal, why don't you start?
Sure. Thank you so much for the introduction. Yes, I'm Chantel. I am currently a senior software engineer at Microsoft. I've been at Microsoft for about 8 years now, so since March of 2017. Um, and that's primarily where my professional experience comes from. About 10 years ago, I graduated with bachelor's in science of computer science from University of Missouri. And after that, I worked briefly at Citibank in fintech before moving on to Microsoft. Now I focus on platform engineering for both the Viva Engage products and Microsoft Teams products. And I'm a senior software engineer and currently still working in that space and in that role, supporting those two products.
Awesome. Hailey.
Hello. Good morning, good people. My name is Hailey. I currently work at Slack or Salesforce, if we're being specific. They did acquire us. I've been with Slack since 2019 and started in recruiting, which is actually where I met Ariel, which is such a fun story. And it's been a great time so far. Before I was at Slack, I studied cognitive science at UC Berkeley, and always been interested in humans and technology, and that's how I've kind of landed here today. And so I'm happy to be here, happy to talk with my girls, and we just love to chat. So I'm excited to bring y'all along on our conversation as we talk about how we thrive in this new world. So thanks for having me.
I love that. All right, wait.
Hi everyone, I'm Whitney. Well, I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. I study computer science at Howard University, and I spent 6 years doing software engineering at Microsoft. Fun fact, Shanta was actually one of my mentors while I was at Microsoft. I'm so happy to be here on this podcast with everyone. And anyways, so after doing 6 years at Microsoft as a software engineer, I left in January to be a full-time acquisition entrepreneur. This is my first time introducing myself in this role that I find myself in. And I know a lot of people is like, what is acquisition entrepreneurship? I'm still figuring that out. But the gist is I'm now the founder and CEO of Capital Wit, which is a private equity firm. And we are focused on acquiring service-led service-based businesses in neighborhoods and communities across the US. We are currently focused on the pet industry, and we had our first acquisition end of last year. So I'm currently figuring out what it means to actually grow this.
Congratulations.
Yes. So thank
Yes.
you. And I'm excited to be here with everyone.
Well, I want you to keep talking because my first question for you all is just to tell us all how you got into your roles. And I know you all just gave us like a super high level summary, but if you can share with us if you stumbled into your role or if it was super intentional or how you got to where you are today.
Definitely not intentional. But since I know myself, I've always been entrepreneurial. Like back in high school, I'll be selling cookies. I'm always thinking of like the master plan, plot in life, right? I thought I was gonna be a doctor, and then I ended up at Howard University and I discovered computer science. I discovered hackathons, and I was hooked by the empowerment that we have as like engineers to like just make things happen without asking permission. So my entrepreneurial spirit now had the tools to make that happen through
Mhm.
technology. And I was fortunate to get like an internship at Microsoft my sophomore year. And that took me to San Francisco, where I met Chantal actually, my very first internship. And just being in San Francisco and among other people was like, oh wow, like the sky is not the limit. Just have an idea and either pitch it well to get funding or like go heads down and make it happen
Yeah.
by coding. So I got caught up in technology based on like my excitement of new technology, specifically blockchain, big data. In my early career, I worked with a lot of big companies as we helped them ideate how to incorporate technology as they pivot according to the new world demands. That was pretty exciting. And then I landed in deep technology because I thought I needed to be really good at one thing, right? When I got there, I quickly realized that's not me. I'm not a specialist, and I really do not care about being like a deep tech expert. And this is probably the conversation you overheard as I was figuring out like what mountain do I really want to climb? Like, do I
Yeah.
want to climb over this really intense effort that is required to become a deep expert in cloud networking, where the people who shine here has like 20 plus years? Or do I need to revisit what was my core, what was important to me? And for me, that was entrepreneurship and betting on myself. So as I was an engineer at Microsoft, I always dabbled with different side projects, real estate, and these different things. I've always been embedded in podcasts and communities where people are looking at the newest thing to like be an entrepreneur or make
Hmm.
money or become financially free. And of course, everyone hears like the passive income thing, right? But
Hmm.
one of those communities led me to acquisition entrepreneurship. Cody Sanchez, specifically, if anyone knows about this space, they probably see Cody Sanchez a lot on YouTube, Instagram, where she speaks on buying businesses, buying laundromats, buying these different things where you could sort of buy yourself a role and an actual bona fide business that already prove itself over the 15 plus years that it was in existence. Yes. So that's how I ended
How
up here.
how long do you think you were like ingesting that message before you actually decided to do it and like take the dive?
I'm very spontaneous, so I'm the
Not
type of
long.
person is like once it clicks, and I'm passionate about it, I jump, like I take that risk. But to be honest, I heard about this around the ending of 2022 as I was stabilizing my real estate portfolio. And at that moment, I had the light bulb moment of like, real estate is not going to get me out of my six-figure paying salary. This
Mhm.
business thing sounds really well in the sense that I can buy a business large enough that where I don't have to create something from zero because it's already working, and it's just
Mhm.
a matter of me applying the skills that I already know that I have in terms of problem solving, strategy to like take the business to a next level. So between 2022 and like let's say January this year was me sort of putting my ducks in a row, trying to come up with a
Mhm.
master plan. But to be very honest, I jumped the moment I was like, I'm not feeling this anymore. Like this, I'm going all in on this and make this happen whatever way possible. Yes.
Well, we're going to come back to that because that is one of my future questions. But Hailey,
Yes.
tell us how you got into, and you kind of already said this a little bit because I met you in recruiting when I was a recruiter. I'm no longer in a recruiter seat, but I am still technically under like the TA org. So I'm throwing recruiting events. But yeah, tell me how you got to where you are.
Man, how do we get here? I ask myself that every day. Um, I think, how do we want to play this story? Okay, grew up in a family of artists. My family is very artistic. We're always on the front stage. We're also very community oriented. So I've always been about the people. I've always been about um, how do we incorporate everyone? How do we just be, right? And then I learned about computers, and I was like, oh, I like that. Okay, like computers. Went all in, supported by my parents to go to all the computer camps, technology conferences as much as I can as a young child. Grew up, did everything, right? All the intensives, all the summers. It was great. Landed at UC Berkeley.
And by intensive, you mean boot camps, like intensive camps for
Yeah,
computer science? Okay.
my summers, yeah, my
Just to
summers were
clarify.
spent during high school. My summers were spent doing a summer program called Smash. And it's a 5-week STEM program where we did advanced math, advanced science courses, technology courses, all that good stuff on the campus and stayed on campus. So I was kind of being almost groomed to stay at UC Berkeley
Mhm.
because I landed there after I graduated, and I was very grateful to be accepted because it's not a guarantee program at all. Um, was excited to be at Berkeley. Thought I wanted to do computer science, but was missing the human part of computers and technology. Um, I sat in classes and I thought, this is exciting, but it's very theoretical. It's very up in the air. I don't understand. Where's the application? Where's the real tangible use of this technology, these computers that we use every day and that we know and sometimes love, sometimes maybe not. And learned about cognitive science, which was the perfect intersection of humans and technology, and was able to kind of sprinkle around the campus and learn in different fields because cognitive science is a discipline that has, I think, 6 different um, kind of focuses. So there's anthropology, linguistics, computer science, psychology, philosophy, and I think there's one more I'm missing. Neuroscience. Yeah,
I
like so it's a lot. It's a lot, but it's very layered, and it's a fun time to learn about who we are as humans and how we develop, and then also how are we interacting with this new technology because technology has been around for ages. And so how has it been advancing? How has it transitioned? How are we transitioning as beings? And all that fun stuff. And I was really excited. And thought I just wanted to do straight engineering straight out of college. I was like, I'm just going to do engineering. This is the best thing. We got to get a job. It's a whole thing. Went that route. Didn't really click.
Yeah.
Wasn't It wasn't who I was really trying to be as a career lady. And was just kind of out in the world, fresh grad, new grad, didn't know what to do. Was scouring all the job boards. This is back in 2018.
But very
Networking,
relevant to today because lots of people
absolutely,
probably on this call are scouring all the job boards. Yep.
absolutely, absolutely. So a lot of networking, a lot of Facebook groups, which is where I stumbled upon um, someone in the Facebook group saying, "Hey, we have a contracting position at Slack. It's in recruiting." I thought, why not? Let's try it. Let's get into this industry. I knew I needed to get my foot in the door, as they say, right? And I was willing to pivot into a non-technical role just to be next to the technical people. That was
Yeah.
my whole
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
I say, I'm humble enough. I can learn some things, and it doesn't mean I'm not acknowledging my technical background. It just means we're just going to take a quick pause, and we're going to have to do what we need to do. We need work. We need
Yeah.
funds to
Yeah.
manage our life,
Yeah.
and we also want to network, and we also want to be in this technical space. So joined Slack in recruiting. Had a great time. Met some awesome people. I think it was a really great first step for my career because I was able to kind of land in a space that was so personable. Learned so much about like the life cycle of technical roles and recruiting and just how to be more people oriented. So it was really on brand to how I was already thinking about my career. Learned about developer relations, which is the industry that I'm in now, while at Slack, and they were doing awesome stuff. They were, how are we advocating for developers? How are we teaching developers? How are we bringing education to the forefront of everything we do? Um, and that really spoke to me as someone who I'm always aware of my privilege, of being able to access a lot of information. And I think awareness is key to where I am today. And so being able to learn about this org within this greater tech company that was already bringing awareness to other people, I thought, oh, yeah, that sounds exactly what I like, sounds exactly of like where I need to be. Um,
I want to interject because you said something that's so relevant to all the people listening to this call, but sometimes you do have to take a step back and think outside of the box and you think about where you want to be, but there may be non-traditional, non-direct ways of getting there, right? So through a contract in recruiting, you get into a really, really great SaaS tech company, and then you're able to move around after you've learned a lot about the company, and you're even a better candidate when you finally interview for that job you want, right? You didn't say all that, but that's what I'm pulling out of what you said. And I want people to know that it is super important, especially now when the market is not great and people are really trying to figure out what their next move is, to consider those non-linear, non-obvious, non-direct routes to getting you where you want to be.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
and I think nonlinear is the key word here because it's very it's hard to go from a degree where everything is very linear, right? Everything is very zeros and ones, black and white. This is the logic. It's A, B, C, D, and then to be like, well, actually, I'm just gonna do Z. I'm gonna jump to Z, and we're just gonna jump in, and we're gonna see what happens, and then we'll go back. Maybe we'll go back to A. Maybe we'll go back to C. Maybe F. I don't know, and we'll see where that lands us. And I think that's where I was thinking. I say, my ego is okay. I don't need to be this like, oh, I just graduated UC Berkeley. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be an engineer because that's where I was. I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I was up there. Of course,
I mean,
number
but
one
that's
public
the area.
university.
It's hard not to
Mhm,
think like that when you are in the ecosystem of San
mhm,
Francisco, to be fair.
mhm.
Like,
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm an Oakland native, right? So I'm already in the ecosystem. I
yes,
know that it's. I've been there. I'm in the talks. I'm in the rooms. We're in the conversations. Everyone is. We're gunning for six figures. We need
yes,
to get
yes,
there now. It needs
yes,
to happen
yes.
today. Man, that's a lot. Okay, and I'm too community oriented. I spend time with my people. I'm not sitting here at 2 a.m. trying to do.
Right,
No, I'm
right, right.
sorry. That's not me.
No, no,
um,
but I appreciate
yeah.
that way. I want to give Chantal a sec because I have so many questions that I want you all to answer. So we got to keep it moving, Chantal.
Sure, sure. I'll jump in here. I think similar to Whitney, my journey here started in college, where I too thought I was going to be a doctor, because or a lawyer, right? So nobody in my family went to college, and so my idea was if I go to college, I'm going to college to try to make money, and who makes money? Doctors and lawyers. And so
Yep.
I got to college, and then I realized in order to be a doctor or a lawyer, I have to go to another round of college after this, and I don't have money for that right now. So I needed to rethink that plan. And so I met a few folks who were in the College of Engineering, and they said after 4 years you can get a job, decent job. I said that sounds sign me up. Um, So I went over to the College of Engineering, doing general engineering. General engineering at the time was more mechanical civil, and I ran into a roadblock where I went to University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, and I'm in the middle of Missouri dealing with, more traditional companies, and you're at the career fair, and I'm not getting opportunities for internships. I'm not getting a call back. I'm not having, no conversation there. And this same friend actually was in computer science, and he was the one telling me that like he thought I could do computer science. People can just see your GitHub. Your people are getting internships, making more than my parents are making full time over the summer. And so I said,
Mhm,
again, sure, sign me up.
mhm.
And so I take the intro courses. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And what I quickly realized about computer science that had let me jump in kind of head first was that no one could deny what you built. And I think in
Right.
traditional engineering, you needed these engineering firms or these other companies to give you a chance first for you to then come and build something. I think what's special about tech, and I think it's still special about tech, is that I am so empowered by myself. And so,
I
you
love
can
that.
deny me, but you can't deny this mobile app I built. You cannot deny this website. You cannot deny this. Go look at the code. Go, if you don't want to look at the
Mhm,
code, fine. Here's the link to the website. Look, it works. It looks nice. It does what
mhm.
it says it's doing. Download my mobile app on your phone. And
Yeah,
so I quickly realized that, this may be a shortcut to some of the issues and that I'm having here. And that's kind of how it happened for me. And so I did get some traction there and was able to get internships in the financial tech space and in the retail tech space from this, making more than my parents made over the course of the summer. And so then I realized, yeah, I'm all in here.
yeah.
And at that time I was had a double major with psychology because I thought I was going to go maybe in medical school, maybe psychiatry or something like that. So I kept that, and I think that is important for I think Kylie and both Whitney talked about learning and studying things other than tech and maybe helping us in our career later. So I do think that helped as well. But from that point on, I pretty much was kind of 10 toes into the technical space. And after internships, after working a little bit in financial tech, I was able to get the opportunity to work at Microsoft, where in the past I was, unfortunately, denied most of the interviews, just interview after interview with big tech, Seattle, San Francisco, New
Mhm.
York, big places. But I was able to get, smaller roles, starting at, Citibank, and internships at, retail tech like Target or Cerner in the healthcare tech space in the Midwest. And so I will say that gave me a very strong starting point when going for the big, the home runs out of the gate did not work for me for 2 years
Mhm.
constantly. And after working at Citibank for a small period of time, I actually was called back from the new grad role that I had thought I had been denied from Microsoft and given an opportunity to start at Microsoft in San Francisco. And that's how my Microsoft career actually started.
Let me
So yeah,
ask you, did you have to actively stay in touch with your recruiter at Microsoft to make that happen, or did they come after you without you keeping in touch?
it was a little bit of both. So it was a colleague we used to work with who actually was on my interview loop, and so I actually didn't hear anything back from the recruiter. And so I had to start my job. Like I have to start a job.
Mhm,
I'm assuming it's a no. We're well beyond 2 months. I'm following up. I'm doing what I
mhm.
can. And so someone on my loop actually emailed me and said, "Hey, did you hear back from the recruiter?" And I'm like, no. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, why would he email me unless it was a yes? But let me not think that.
Yeah, right.
And then maybe 3 weeks later, he emails me back, says, you should be getting an offer from the recruiter. And essentially, I think there was a little bit of a headcount issue, and I don't know if I was left, right, like off, and then they got a little bit more
Mhm.
headcount, and I got scooped in there.
Swooped in, yeah.
But I was emailing the recruiter, and I was trying to stay in contact with him. No, I was still interested. When I saw that email come in from the colleague that I had that was on my panel, I stayed responsive. I followed up, and let them know, look, I'm still interested, and it worked out for me.
That is awesome. I love all these stories. My next question for you all is for me overhearing the chat in the car. And to be fair, I was like in and out of sleep, but I knew that this was a very good conversation that I was hearing. I want to hear about the moment that all of you knew, because now we're shifting gears. We have your story, but when did you know, like, okay, I need more? I need to take development into my own hands. It's time for me to find my own resources. Like, what was that moment for each of you? Whitney, wait, you want to start?
Okay, I can try. The moment that I knew I needed to take control of my career was actually 6 months into starting at Microsoft.
Okay.
The first 6 months, it was amazing. Like, internship is great because they pour into you and they show you like the fun stuff. But when you start full time, usually it's like cold water being splashed on your face. But
Okay.
my first 6 months, I still got a really awesome experience. Like almost every week or every other week, I was traveling. Like I got flown out to the UK, Amsterdam, Chicago. So it was a lot of traveling and meeting really awesome people who've been traveling and doing this. It was like the cool part of Microsoft, I would say,
Yes.
right? Like the tech evangelists, the people oriented techies. So I was caught up in that world, and October or around September, after Microsoft fiscal year changed, we got hit with organizational changes. And that was like my first
Oh,
time going through like org changes where the thing that I really enjoyed was being cut, right? And they're going to try a whole new strategy in terms of how we deliver impact. And it was my first time seeing like that happen where my how I spent my last 6 months is not how I'm gonna be moving forward. And they're trying to sell me a dream in terms of like this is for our benefit. Like the story that was
yeah.
told was this will make us better engineers. Right? But
Those org changes. I'm also, for anyone who's listening who doesn't work at like maybe a tech or a tech adjacent company, org changes happen so often. They're like the
yes.
only consistent thing in tech is an org change is coming
I love that.
in like 6 to 8 months. It's happening. So you saying that even reminds me, like that's probably when a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know if
Yeah.
this is going to work. That org change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much that all change blindsided me. But I bought into the Kool-Aid, like I drank it because it was my first org change, and I'm like, okay, maybe you know what's best for me.
Go with it.
I do want to be a better engineer, so I went with it, and I think that's the moment I got off track in terms of like my own why in my career, because from there it just went downhill in terms of like further and further away from the original role that I signed up for, which was to be a tech evangelist, really focused on the technology I'm interested in and helping other people incorporate that in their solutions. And then it just turned into like general consulting for the sake of delivering projects end to end.
Hmm.
Um and of course, as I got further away from my truth, um everything else started getting blurred.
Yeah.
So that is what led me down to the rabbit hole of like, okay, I don't like being this generalist. Let me get specific. But
Hmm.
I didn't really get like step back out to go back to my original thing, which was like, I need to be passionate. I need to
Hmm.
be
Hmm.
passionate about the thing that I get specific about. So in that middle gray area, I think what helped me the most was staying close to people who were actually passionate and not bought into the whole golden handcuffs of like comfortable life.
Hmm.
Still wanted more for them. So I found that by mentoring like the interns and new hires, right? They had that energy, and the more I interacted with it, I was like, I don't have that energy anymore. Like,
Hmm.
I want to get back there. So that was like my biggest thing that helped me get back to my truth. And then the other thing was speaking to other folks who have been um in the industry for long. For instance, Chantel, she's a senior engineer. So in theory, she was where I wanted to go to next, right?
Hmm.
And then in my current org, I was looking at like the skip managers, like the director of the orgs. I'm looking around leadership to see who represents my next in my actual situation, because Chantel is adjacent. Chantel is like great in terms of helping listen to my situation and help me know how to navigate, but
Hmm.
I'm still in a specific situation that she can't really reflect, right? So as I started looking at my situation, I didn't see anyone I wanted to be like. So that's how I started getting more clarity. And Chantal is saying all the right things, right? In terms of what it takes to become senior engineer. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you're speaking truth, but I'm like,
But is
I
that what
can't
I
apply
want?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
Whit just answered a few questions, which is
Yeah.
great. So I hear you say that moment could have been an org shift that took you
Yeah.
away from what you originally signed up to do. And then I hear you also say that the way you kind of dealt with that was to go seek out that passionate energy that you lost in that org shift. So, like mentoring, not seeking out a mentor, but actually doing the mentoring and being around that energy. And then also seeking out people who were still passionate and who maybe were more aligned with where you wanted to go.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Hailey, tell us. So now you got to answer two questions in a row too. So the moment of like, this ain't gonna work, and then also what you did to kind of like figure out what you needed to do next.
Ooh, I don't know if there is a moment or more so a mindset that I adopted the moment I decided to enter into Slack. Because in the back of my mind, there's always been this kind of voice saying, like, well, we don't know where we're going to end up, but we're just going to keep trying things and learning and being spaces that allow us to learn and that allow us to kind of be where we want to be because we really don't know where that is. Similar to Whitney, it said, she said, who am I thriving to become? Who do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who am I looking up to? And there are all these amazing Black women at Slack. And I was like, well, I just want to be like them. I just want to be cool like them. And how do I do that? Well, they thrive outside of work. They have whole lives. They're multi-layered humans. And I wanted to become that. Didn't know how, didn't know where to start, and still figuring it out
And
every
you
day.
and I both came to Slack for an amazing Black woman. We both came to Slack through Roz Francis Harris, who I know is not on this call because she's super busy, but shout out to Roz.
Yeah, yeah,
Keep going.
yeah, yeah. No, shout out. I, I want to also acknowledge the power that we have as Black women because I think it is very important to call out because it's why I do the work that I do. It's how I'm in a lot of spaces that I am based off
Mm-hmm.
of just how I look, but also whose shoulders I stand on,
Mm-hmm.
and who has pushed me to become a better person and thrive in a space where I can thrive. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it wasn't a moment; it was more of a mindset shift to enter into the tech space and say, okay, we don't have one example of someone, but there are many examples of women doing awesome, badass things. How do we also enter into this space and enter into that persona of wanting to be a Black woman that someone wants to become? And so
Mm-hmm.
I decided that I would continue to learn as much as I can. I put myself into different meetings and different rooms and different events just because. No real reason behind except absorption, wanting to become a sponge, wanting
And can
to
I ask, how
take.
easy was it for you to get into those meetings in those rooms? Just for people listening, was it easy for you to just like find those meetings and those groups and join them, or was there a strategy to being included in those things too?
I think the strategy was, what are my peers doing? And then also, how do I speak about what I'm looking for? I had a really
Mm-hmm.
supportive team in recruiting who kind of knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. I spoke about my story. I said, yeah, I studied cognitive science. I, I have a lot of technical experience and I'm here in recruiting. It is what it is. I decided to join and I'm fresh out of college and I'm deciding that I wanted to do this for my life and y'all are great people. So let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think it was, hearing different conversations, being in community with the coworkers that opened up this whole other, slew of spaces that I could be in, that I could become in based off of their own life experiences and me coming into a new space. So yeah.
I love that. And so my takeaway from Highly for everyone is also that you can lean on the peers who are around you. And I know most of us, if we're thinking we want to find another job or do something different, you kind of do it in the shadows. You don't really tell people that you want to do something different. But when you do feel comfortable having that conversation, then all of a sudden you have access to their networks and they have, doors they can even open for you that you wouldn't know about because you're kind of holding it tight. So my takeaway from that was you should be having conversations with people when you're trying to figure out where you want to go. And if you know it's somewhere different, still have those conversations for sure. And there we have a question that's about the resources that you all kind of relied on for self-development. And that's why I'm doing these summaries of each of your answers so I can kind of answer those questions. Okay, Chantal, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think I had two of those moments. I think for the first moment for me is actually joining Microsoft and really sitting into my full time role. And I think as Whitney mentioned, when you join full time, depending on the team you're on, it changes your experience. So I joined the Viva Engage team, which was a former acquisition that was now being accelerated into Microsoft. And so it still very much functioned like a startup, but we had big company expectations. And so that was the new grad role in that situation. I wouldn't say was a true new grad role now that I'm a senior, right? It was higher. And so joining in that space and realizing that I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm not even I'm not imposter syndrome, not any of that. Like
Mm-hmm,
being honest with yourself and
mm-hmm,
realizing I'm seeing people ship things. I'm being included in this meeting. I'm told I'm working on this project, but nobody has told me what to do. And
yeah,
everybody in my family works in like factory work. Like, you go, your job is to screw this on. You screw this on for 8 hours while the line is running, and you go home. And so I come to work on time, and but nobody's telling me what to do.
mm-hmm,
And then I realized like it's on me, right? I have to figure out what to do. I have to figure out like nobody's going to say do this and change this in the code base so that we can do that. I have to go to this meeting and then push it out in this timely manner. And so I think that was the first part of me realizing
yeah,
I need to focus on what it means to be a professional engineer in this space because I don't know. And unfortunately, my
mm-hmm,
internships didn't prepare me for that. They were very, closed programs where you had a
mm-hmm,
track of what you were doing. And the school I went to a large state school where, some of the newer grads coming out of, Berkeley or Carnegie Mellon or Stanford have a different level of preparation for big tech, right? I was not in those shoes. And so I think that was the first step for me was, being honest with myself, realizing there is a gap and realizing it's on me to fill in that gap.
yeah,
Paired with my first manager left after like maybe 3 months me starting. Then we went through a reorg, got
yeah,
another manager. Then that manager left, and I went through another reorg. So I had three managers by the time I hit my 1 year mark. And so when I look at whose responsibility it is to help me or help me integrate or help me do any of those things, even if I wanted to rely on a manager in that situation, it was ever
mm-hmm,
changing and I couldn't.
mm-hmm,
So then it
mm-hmm,
again fell back on me. And I think it took a lot of work, working early, working late, observation, understanding, watching how other people do things, putting yourself out there vulnerably and saying, I'm going to get tore up on these code reviews. I'm going to get like, it wasn't necessarily a welcoming space. I'm not going to
mm-hmm,
lie,
mm-hmm,
especially for us. And, I'll just be honest with you, what we look like and us entering in the space, everybody's not
mm-hmm,
always as welcoming, right? And
mm-hmm,
you all have seen the studies, right? Harsher code reviews, not very welcoming, right? But again, I had to make a decision and say,
yeah,
look, I have to put myself out there early and often to get this feedback because I need it to grow, even if it's
yeah,
harsher, even if it may not be the same way or the same feedback they would give it if it's somebody else. I have identified that I'm not where I need to be. And if they
yeah,
have the tools and the power to try to help me get there, then I got to suck it up and try to get there. And so that first year and a half, probably almost 2 years of my career was a lot of me doing that and looking at other people that are successful in the team and the space and constantly modeling, constantly, putting myself out there with my pull requests, my specs, my ideas, and just getting that
mm-hmm,
harsh feedback. But in turn, it helped prepare me to now be able to be a functioning engineer and understand what the expectations are and understand what these bounds are. Although it was hard and it was difficult, I think it helped me kind of accelerate in that early career and fill some of those gaps that I had identified that I came in with. Unfortunately, when I didn't necessarily have people that were able to help me into that because of the structure of my organization at the
mm-hmm.
time.
I love this answer. And I'm like, kudos to you for just even being able to put yourself out there like that. Because everything you just said is so scary for most of us. Like, so scary. And you did it. And I just think that's probably why you are as successful as you are, because you are willing to do that. Now, the they in your example, were they peers, mentors, like people who you reported to? Who were the they that you reached out to give you all this feedback?
Mostly peers or people in elevated positions around my engineering team.
Okay.
I think I had one mentor that was more of a manager focused in an adjacent role. I think he helped me with feeling confident to just give it all I got while I'm here, right?
Hmm.
Because in the end, if I don't and then I'm not making the cut, right, I won't have the opportunity to. And so
Yeah.
I will say that he was helpful in helping me in that way, in that confidence way, although he couldn't help me technically.
Yeah.
The people helping me technically were people that would try to jump in where people are having relevant experience when they're on a relevant project. And most of the time, and I'm thankful, most of the time people would say yes, or they would give the feedback. And like I said, it wasn't always nice. I'm not going to be honest with you, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm appreciative that they even, they took
Yeah.
the time to do it, even if they did not, were not able to convert into being like a full-time mentor to me.
Yeah. So, do you all, one of the audience questions is about how to find mentors. Do you all have thoughts on what's the best strategy or the best way to find people to mentor you? Anybody can answer that.
I want to jump in because I think there for me I have no strategy, if I'm being honest. Um, I identify people who I think are really cool just based off what I see or what I hear, in the channels. Um, and then I would reach out and also taking advantage of where I am, right? So wherever you are in your career, there is someone who can connect you with someone who might
Hmm.
become a mentor, right? It
Hmm.
doesn't need to be an immediate connection. It doesn't need to be my friend become my mentor. It could be my friend has a friend or my friend has a person. They
Hmm.
could be right. Um, and it's a bit vulnerable. The strategy, so to speak, is hey, you're kind of really cool and I think you're doing great work and I'm really interested in what you do. Tell me how you got there. It
Yeah.
start there. Because I struggled with trying to find mentors.
Hmm.
And I consider Whitney and Chantel like some of my mentors. Like we're
Yeah.
friends, but they're also like people I look up to. And I start with gratitude. I really appreciate the work that you've done because you've come a long way, and I
Yeah.
acknowledge that that is not easy, and I just want to remind them, right, as a mentor of
Yeah.
that, and then come from a place of so this is where I am. What do you think about my journey so far? And that's where I start. I don't expect anything. It's more conversation. It's less about
Hmm.
the transaction because everything
Hmm.
these days feels very
Agreed.
transactional. Um, and it's a conversation. It's purely conversation because I think we are losing touch, which is want to chat. Just chat like we're doing today. Let's just
I
chat.
know.
Be
I know.
chill. We don't have to do too. Be calm. It's okay. So I was, that's like, it feels so, yeah, the conversation these days is like, find a mentor, make sure you're bringing follow up points, action.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Also, we're human. How you doing? You drinking water?
Yeah.
Okay. You take a nap today? Love that
Yes.
for us. So,
I will say I give a lot of advice on how people can find mentors, and it's more like what Hailey was saying that was more formal. I'm like, don't waste people's time. Only ask for 15 or 20 minutes. Have your questions thought out. So I think a combination of both. But what I'm taking away from Hailey's answer is that you can rely on your networks to find the right mentors for you instead of these cold call LinkedIn messages to aspirational people who may never respond because why would they yet? They don't really know you, right? Wait.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what Hailey said. Like personally, I struggle with formal mentorship as well. My favorite form is peer mentorship, where I find someone who's doing exactly what I'm doing too, and we do it together and keep each other accountable. So that's like how Hailey and I connect a lot. But One thing that actually works a lot for me is like exposure mentorship, where I try to have a 30-minute conversation with anybody in any space in which I'm interested in. And most times I just want to hear your story, right? Most times I don't come prepared with questions. I'm less of like a preparation person and more of like a let's flow, right? Like
Mm-hmm,
make
mm-hmm,
conversational, like Heidi was saying, right? Like really go for that relationship. But in those calls, it's about like, who are you? What are you working on? Like, what gets you excited? Like, just
mm-hmm.
hear that person's story. And everyone wants to speak about themselves, even though they may be humble. They
Mm-hmm.
enjoy speaking about themselves. And I always get inspired or some action item or something that can help me plot out my role just from that 30-minute conversation. And based on the vibe of the conversation, I can decide, hey, can I actually follow up with you in 3 months for another conversation? Or I can decide if I ever want to speak to them again or set a recurring, or,
Yes.
So it's like, to me, it's a very low hanging approach to the
Yeah,
whole formal mentorship. And I will encourage, like, just get comfortable asking people for a one on one quick coffee
yeah,
chat and make
yep,
it conversational, like, treat it like speed dating. Like,
yeah.
yep,
Which is
match
also
and go.
terrifying for most people,
Yes.
to be fair,
Yes.
but yes.
Yeah, that's what I
Chantal?
wanted to add.
Sure. Yeah. I just want to add, I think I sometimes have a hard time finding mentors, but I think what has helped me is kind of the idea of temporary mentorship, and it's scoped to a very specific thing. And so, like when I talked about early on in my career, trying to bridge that gap, let me see what people are contributing to these code bases. I'm reading all of this code. I don't understand it. Let me see who's contributing to it. They're successful. Let me see if I could just scope a conversation on, can you tell me more about this change even? Can you tell
Mhm.
me more about this work that you did, this piece right here? Can you explain this to me? Do you have 15? Do you have 20 minutes? And I think that's helped me bridge the gap to, help me level up ultimately. But, help me relate to people who may not have traditionally been a mentor for me or whatnot. We may be very different, and we may
Mhm.
not be able to be, they may not be able to be a mentor for me for a whole career perspective, but they may be able to have be a temporary mentor in that way where I can learn something from them. And I think that's a little bit different than the idea of a mentor that can maybe help you overall. And I think that is important. I think those are a little bit harder to find. And so I think if you're struggling with finding those, I think if you have goals or identify things that you want to work on, and you see people around you that are doing those things successfully, it could be a good opening conversation to have with them. Is just pick one thing, like, oh, I like how you're able to communicate so widely throughout the org, and it's very
Mhm.
concise. Can you help me? Can you help me understand how you collect all these things? How you do this? How you do that? Right? Even if
Mhm.
it's non-technical. And I think, like Whitney said, people do like to talk about themselves, or even if it's not themselves, I can talk about the work I did because I just did it. And
Yeah.
so most of the time, people will say yes. And that people approach me with that often, and I never say no. If it's a no, it's just not right now. But not right now
Mhm.
just means next week. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean like
Yeah.
call me back in 3 quarters, right? So
Yeah.
it most of the time people will have the time for that. And so even if they can't help you in a overall career way, and as me as a person who's been a mentor perspective, I'm like an accidental mentor. I always say, just I as Highly and Whitney say, I like talking to people, and I like they we talk as friends, and then we end up sharing
And
some
you
career
get
advice.
tricked into it because then they
You
just keep
know,
coming back to you. You get
they
tricked into
do.
mentoring them.
And you do. And I think a lot of people who've been successful, maybe in their careers, especially people who have faced any kind of adversity, most people that I meet don't want anybody else fighting through those exact same struggles. And so if you meet somebody, then that's how I feel. And then so if you meet somebody and they, you realize that they've been through some obstacles and whatnot, even if it's not the same exact obstacles as you're going through, they could be a good person for a mentor, because most of us that have been through something
Yeah.
don't want other people to unnecessarily
Go
go
through it.
through it. And that's how I end up accidentally mentoring all the time. So I'm like, well, let me tell you this. So you don't maybe have to deal with what I dealt with the same way. Yeah.
I love that. So, temporary mentorship or short term mentorship is a brand new concept I just learned, and I love that. Now, we have like 10 minutes left. I have a million more questions, but there's some audience questions that I wanted to get in, and it's going to shift the conversation a little bit. So, now when we talk about the expectations we set for ourselves, how we manage our internal expectations, how we take in all the noise, because there's a million channels for us to see what everybody is doing at any given moment and what they're accomplishing, and then how we balance that with what we want to accomplish. Talk to me about kind of your own strategies for just keeping your expectations for yourself in line and balanced. This might be a work life balance question, but really it's just about how do you keep it together with everything that's kind of going on and everything that you're ingesting about everybody else's journeys. I don't know who wants to start there.
Oh boy. Well,
You want to
me
start?
or
Chantal,
he wants
no,
to start. No,
Chantal, you go. You
I'll
raised the
start.
hand. You go.
I'll
You go.
start. I'll start. Okay. Yeah, I think this is difficult. I just wanted to acknowledge that this is difficult. And I think sometimes when I was at a non-senior level, I thought when I became senior, I would just be confident, and this would just go away. But it actually doesn't. It's constant, because now not only do you have the people above you and at your level that are doing things, you see people at lower levels doing things. And so you want to always make sure that, oh, am I at this level? Am I continuously proving myself at the senior and above level, right? But one thing that I always tell myself and I remember is that all of us are different and we have different skill sets, even if we have the same title. And I work with people and have the same title as me. That's the, Carnegie Mellon math champion that can solve, these coding problems in 10 seconds, like beating AI, right? That's not me. That has never been me. That's not why I got into computer science. That is not why I'm here. However, they call on me, especially when we're negotiating very hard technical requirements, right? With product and with external teams, because I'm good at communicating technically. I'm good at I understand the code. I understand what it is. But because of my background and where I'm from and what I've had to do, I'm not scared going into these technical negotiations. And
Yeah.
so I can hold the line and I could do this. Whereas that individual that excels in that's not their skill set. That's not what they're good at. And so I always have to remind myself that we all have a different journey here. We're not the same, even if we have the same title, or even if we're on the same career track or whatnot. And as long as I'm making the best use of what I can use with myself, what I can do, and I can get my work done, and it's sufficient. I'm growing, I'm learning more, I'm contributing. That is okay. The comparison will always be there. So if you feel like, oh, once I make it to senior, once I make it to principal, I'll feel better. You probably won't. And it's something that you're going to have to continuously work on, because honestly, I started to feel worse because I'm like, I'm at this level. Oh, wait, a software engineer 2 finished that faster than me or something like that. If you
Yeah.
constantly compare yourself, you're always going to be feeling like that. And then you discount the work that you do. You discount your strengths because you don't then compare yourself to that person to say, but they didn't just negotiate all of that. They didn't just do this. They didn't just do that, right? You forget that piece. And so it's something that I would say, needs to continuously be worked on. Don't save it for when you become a higher level. I'll
Yeah.
let you all go.
That's great advice.
Well, clearly
Who
we
else
see
wants to
why
chime in? I
we see
know.
we see
That's what I
why
was
Chantel's the
thinking.
mentor. So
The
obviously,
accidental mentor.
I love it. I love it. In support of what Chantel said, I believe in context. Context is everything. That's a new. It's not new, but I am bringing that to the forefront of my life and career more and more these days. I am different in different spaces, no matter where I am, but I'm still me, right? So the context and how I exist at work is different than the context and how I exist with my friends, which is different than the context in which I exist at home
Mhm.
in my family. And remembering that I could be excelling in all these other threads in life and still be doing just as well in a thread of life that may be moving slower or may not be turning um, in, or the output may not be like this big idea in my head that I think of where I need to be. Um, but I'm still moving, right? I'm still learning in every context in which I exist, and I think it's important to keep those expectations a bit separate, right? Compartmentalize. For me, it's I work from home, so I'm home almost all the time. So therefore, the context sometimes gets blurry. How do I separate that? Okay, we work at the desk, then we do something else in a different part of the house, and then we do something else in a different that's how I've had to just compartmentalize, really show up for myself because I do a lot of great things outside of work. Work is not everything. Work is 8 hours of my day. There's so many hours in the day. Like there's so much more to me than just this work. And um, I think it's important to encourage yourself outside of the job and understand that you can find a lot of joy within the work, and you can also find way more joy outside the work to bring or not. It's up to you. And I think it's important to remember that.
I love that.
Thanks.
Wait, you want to wrap it up for us?
Sure, yes. I think for me, it starts with like my complete trust in God got me. Like, I don't know if you're aware of the verse where he pretty much says that, and I more valuable than the birds that he makes sure gets food every day without them actually working for the food or storing it. I think that is like at the baseline of like how I operate. Like, if God got me, everything else is cool, right? And I really lean into that because now based on my trust in God, I view my life as like my own personal growth journey. And I personally value growing, right? And it's about me, not about like the people around me. Like in a way, I'm very self-obsessed in that way, where any growth is for my benefit and not to sort of compete with other people. So yeah, I honestly trust that I'm doing the best that I can in this current moment without worrying about what I could be doing more or tomorrow. And then I also rely on the people around me as well. In the corporate setting, I relied on my manager to sharpen me and tell me when I'm not performing. Like that's like our trust bargain in terms of like I cannot know if I'm not performing as I should, right? So if the other people around me isn't speaking up, I am just gonna trust that I'm doing great and keep doing me to the best of my ability and like
I
just
love that.
continue seeking out growth and anything that can show me that there's more I can do. Yeah. Without me overthinking it. Yep.
I
Yes.
love that. Now we are wrapping up. There are 4 minutes. I'm like, how are we going to use these 4 minutes? But what I would love is if all of you could do a roundtable really quick and just tell us the thing you're like most proud of that's a recent accomplishment. And that can be personal or professional, but that's how we'll close this out. And then there were a lot of questions that came through. So we will do our best to get answers to those questions and figure out how to follow up with everybody who asked those questions. But for now, we'll kind of close out on a little bit of bragging. It does not have to be humble, but tell me, what are you most, proud of recently?
I can go first.
Yeah,
I am most proud of the fact that this happened. Like
me
we
too. That look, me too. Me too.
like I'm just saying that we shouldn't keep ourselves in boxes and limit ourselves. Like we went on a trip to Kenya to celebrate our friend. We were dedicated to exploring Africa and having a good time. And yet look at the fruit that came out of it. Like
I
stay
know.
true to yourself, like follow joy, be around good people, and yeah, like I think it will all work out. So I'm just proud of doing the things that I like to do, such as travel and having intentional conversations with like my dear friends, and looking forward to maybe having a part two of this. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I can make that happen. So done.
Yes.
All right, Chantal.
Sure. Let's see. I think just overall, I think I'm most proud of in my career, being successful at this level for this duration. I think I never thought I'd be here. And most recently, we crossed 50 million active users on a main product that I support, which my services are integral to that. So from the data store to the back end services, all 50 million and people are touching it when they're on it. And so when I sit with that and I put that in perspective, I'm like, that's 5 times the people in New York City at any given instance. And I'm the leader of that area. It all runs
Love
through me.
that.
And I never thought I'd be in this position. And so I'm proud of it. And yeah, say that. I'm happy that with that achievement. And so I'm practicing sharing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. All right, Hailey, close us out.
Humble brag. So I like to cook. I like to eat. I love food. And this, at the end of this week, I'm hosting my first dinner for some people, and it's a sold out table of about 20 folks. And I am leaning on my travels to Africa and to Trinidad and to Asia to build the menu. And so I'm really excited about it because I love to feed people. So yeah.
I love it.
That's
And this
awesome.
is my, again, this is my most proud, this for sure. Like this accomplishment. I'm so happy we did this. So now I'm going to close it out. There's a minute left. Thank everybody for being here. Everybody who stayed. I mean, we got up to 108 and we're only at 80. That's really good. We still have 80 people paying attention. This was great. And so I know there's a few messages in on how to follow up. Give us feedback in a survey. Look out for the recording, and we will do our best to answer any questions that we didn't get to. So thank you. Hopefully we'll see you at part 2.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.